Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulletproof Hygiene podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We are so thankful that you're here. If you've joined us before, welcome back. If it's your first time, we are Brittany Simon and Charissa Wood, and we are hygienists who are passionate about advancing our profession and collaborating and making our patients' lives, our team's lives, and our lives better and more fulfilling. So we are here today to talk about goal setting and tracking. And so this involves work goals, it involves personal goals, it involves all of our goals in life. And I think it's really important before we start talking about numbers, especially because it's such a sensitive, touchy topic, we really need to talk about, we're going to talk about the numbers today. We're going to talk about how we set our production and collection goals for the year, but I have to preface with what Charissa and I believe to our cores, which is numbers and profitability in hygiene and dentistry and anything are only sustainable and only happen as a side effect of very, very high levels of assessment, true, real, ongoing rapport with our patients, recommending the best treatment first, and providing high quality of care. So all of that stuff precedes the numbers every single time. Every single time for us, the numbers are the happy side effect. They are not the starting place. So we just want to be uber clear about that, because that is definitely where I come from. The numbers are not the most important thing. The patients are the most important thing. Our teams are the most important. Our health and our safety is very important. The numbers come as a side effect of great planning, of high assessment, of using our brains and working to the full scope of our licensure, right? Yep. So I want to start by saying, so goal setting. Let's talk about goal setting framework. It's really, really important that we don't just set goals emotionally. And I think that a lot of us tend to do this, especially, when it's the first of the year and we're all like, oh, I'm starting over. We're going to go on a diet and we're going to work out every day and we're going to, completely change our lives. And it's like this emotional, you get in this state where you're like worked up, and that's great, but that's not what is going to carry us to completing and achieving our goals, right? Because our emotions are going to change, right, throughout the day and throughout the year and throughout the time that we're supposed to be achieving this goal. So we want to make sure that even if we set it in an emotional state, that there's a framework for it. And it's not just like this, oh, I hope this will happen kind of thing, because if there isn't, we're going nowhere. If you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. I don't remember who said that, but it's true. Oh, good. So I want to start by saying, by giving an acronym that most of you probably already know, but it holds true nonetheless. So it's the SMART goals acronym, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So anytime we set a goal, we want to make sure that it adds up in all of those aspects. It's really important that, I think that at ADS and at SDG, at Spodak and Atlanta Dental Spa, we have really specific systems already in place for setting goals. Like we have periodic team meetings, like we have our morning meeting where we set our daily goal, but we have our annual meetings where we set our annual goal for production, collections, and how we're going to achieve that. And we discuss it very openly. But if your team doesn't already have something like that, I highly recommend scheduling time to do that intentionally, because the time that you will take to set those goals will be paid back tenfold. If you have to take a half a day or a couple of hours as a team at the beginning of the year or mid-year to discuss these things, if you do not do that, you won't know if you're meeting your goals. You won't be productive, because where are you going? What are you aiming for? How do you know? Does the team know? Are you working there together?
Right. And that's why it's so important to be really specific with what you want. I've had hygienists tell me before, well, I want to make more money this year. Okay, awesome. That's a great goal. How much more money do you want to make? Right. What would be success for you? Yeah. What goal do you want to set? So it does have to be specific. That's absolutely important. And because if it's not specific, there's no way to measure it, which is the next letter there, to measure, did I really hit that? Yeah. So they really every single aspect of this has to be in place. The next one is attainable, which is, a lot of people are scared to set goals because what if I don't make it? What if people make fun of me? What if, people feel like I'm a loser because I didn't do it? Are they going to judge me? So you want those goals to be attainable and achievable. I always say there's got to be a stretch, right? Yeah, it's got to grow you. But you want it to be realistic and attainable. I'll let you keep going.
Thank you. And then timely as well. And, on the subject of people judging our goals and meeting them or not meeting them, that is always going to be the issue, whether we succeed, quote unquote, and reach or exceed the goal that we set, or we don't. The people who are judging, it's a them issue. So it's not about you, it's not about me, and the people who are judging are going to judge no matter what, and that's okay because it's their issue.
Yep.
So anytime that good things are happening in our lives, I feel like there's judgment, and anytime bad things are happening, there's judgment, and it's always there. So if we are basing what we are striving for on what other people think, then we're always going to be stuck in a hamster wheel, right? So just that out of the way. I would say too, it's really important that the team knows when we are setting goals for production and collections that it is something that we're aiming for, definitely should be a stretch, and that there's nothing punitive about not meeting it or exceeding it. Because I think sometimes people connect goal setting with punishment, like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't meet it kind of thing. But that's not the point. The point is, if we're not focusing on anything, we don't know where we're going. We don't know how we're getting there. We don't know what we want to do. We're purposeless. That feels terrible,
Yes.
So, my framework for setting goals and at SPODAC General Group, I learned a lot about this when I came on board there. And at first I was super uncomfortable talking about the numbers. I was like, oh my God, I'm a hygienist. Like, I really don't want to get in trouble. And what do I have to do with this? What am I supposed to be producing? Like, what do other hygienists produce? Like, I don't know, I know none of this stuff. And as I was mentored and received a lot of kind of direction from the other hygienists, like who had been there for several years or had been doing this a long time, I realized what Charissa and I said before, and that it really is a side effect of just getting your act together, having a great plan, getting some standardization and calibration with the team, making sure that you are providing the highest level of care, and the numbers will come. They absolutely will. Yeah. And what I will say is, the first, I think 3 to 4 years that I was at SPODAC, I didn't meet my goal. I didn't, 2018 and 19, I did. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing, but there was nothing bad that happened, and others didn't meet their goals. Some did, and some exceeded, but guess what? I don't remember who that was. No one remembers that I did. So it doesn't matter. Like it's so funny how, losing the fear in regards to setting goals and possibly not reaching them is just one of the biggest things. It's like, get out of your own way.
Right. Well, and I think too, it's, you and I talk so much about mindset, because I believe life is about mindset, but in this regard, what does success really mean to you? And we're going to talk about that in another podcast as well. But what does success really look like for you? Because it can't be, the numbers are, like you said, they're a side effect, but there's more things that come from that than just patient care, like your personal growth and development. Did you learn new skills? Did you get more effective at communicating? Like, how did you grow? So working towards those goals isn't just about the numbers. The numbers are almost kind of like the fun at the end to be like, yeah, I did it. Absolutely. It's what happens along that journey that really is the fun part of like becoming who you're going to be and taking care of those patients. And there's so much more to it than the numbers. The numbers are just kind of like the marker, Yeah. It's like when you're running and you're feeling those endorphins as you're running. Certainly. And it's like you hit that, you cross the tape, and it's like, yeah, I did it. And it wasn't about that tape. It was about the whole, every step up to that
the journey.
Yes. Yes,
for sure. And I want to give a really specific example of how I achieved a really big stretch goal for me in 2019. And that was to produce 400,000. So I'm a single book hygienist. I work with a hygiene assistant who also assists about 6 other hygienists on any given day. So I don't have her dedicated assistants, but I do have an extra hand if I need it. So that's a really great resource and a really nice thing. But I do, run my own schedule. I design my schedule according to how I want it to go, and I had to redesign and really rethink things and take a step back and really structure things and be intentional about it in order to meet that goal. And at the end of the year, I did. I did 405. It was my first year. And that was from the prior year where I did just over 300. And I was, working the same amount of hours. It wasn't, it's a huge jump, but that just goes to show for me and for everyone, like what intentionality can do, because what that took was partnering with my admin person. Because we're such a large practice, we have specific admin partners that we work with on our schedule. So that goes for the doctors and the hygienists, and we partner with them and we have ongoing dialogue with them.
Wait, so I just want to clarify this. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that whoever scheduled your book, they didn't just randomly throw a bunch of profis on all day?
No, they sure didn't.
How did that work?
So it worked very well. Thanks for asking. No, it's so at the beginning of the year, Fran and I sat down. Fran is her name. She's kick ass. Like she is very, very good. She is a great partner to have. I love her. I hope she listens to this podcast just to hear this. But she is awesome. She is so like dedicated to her job. And we have just really open conversations about what my expectations are, what we want to reserve specifically for patients. And we did design my schedule together. So in 2019, I took very few lunches, but I always found time to eat. And I did not schedule very much outside of working hours. Those were important things to me. I would rather be busy in my lunch because I found that, an average day, once in a while here and there, I'd have a cancellation and then I'd have 2 hours of open time if I had an hour lunch. So I don't love that. It's not my preference. I would rather find time to eat because my time management is great at this point in time, right? So I always find time to eat. So that was one thing that I told her. It's okay to book me through lunch. I'm not okay with coming in early or staying late. I don't want to do that. So I respected my own time that way and kind of set a parameter. Also, we have blocks on my schedule that are 90 minutes to 2 hours, and those are reserved for fee-for-service new patients or non-surgical periotherapy or whitening, anything with Perio Protect, any high production procedures. And there's on average one of those per day. But if that wasn't enough, I was scheduled for 4 days a week. I was scheduled Monday through Thursday. And then I added what I call my Flex Friday. So Flex Friday is completely autonomous booking. Like I can completely book that day. I can take the whole day off. Like I was hired to work 4 days a week. So this was kind of my choice. And because we have the gift of an open operatory or several open operatories on Fridays, because there are fewer providers there, I could take advantage of that. And I decided to start scheduling myself when I wanted to on Fridays. So what that would look like is throughout the week, I would have a new patient. I would, co-diagnose the patient with perio and they need non-surgical periotherapy. I needed to spend a little more time with them, or we just needed more time in general to complete whatever the therapy was or whatever the patient's chief complaint was. And I didn't have time same day or within the next few months even, which is common because we are booked out quite a bit, which is a gift. It's a great thing, but it's also a challenge. Yes. So my Fridays would be booked usually the week of, and Fridays would end up being, $2,000 to $4,000 days. So it was just all those high production procedures that otherwise would have waited months. And ideally with those procedures, like you don't want the patient to wait a long time because I think that they forget the value of what you talked about. They forget all the reasons why it was so important.
Well, how does it sound to you? Like if you came and saw me today and I was like, oh my gosh, Brittany, you have this infection going on in your body and I'm really concerned about it. These are the things we need to do. It's a really big deal. It can affect you systemically. And you're going to come back and see me in 2 months and we'll start taking care of this.
Right. Like what?
You'd be like, wait, what? Yeah. For 2 months, I'm just going to walk around with this infection.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really important to pre-block your book for those kinds of procedures. Yes. I mean, you think about it, it's very common to do that in the doctor's columns. You project your low and moderate and high profitability appointments and times. A lot of times people don't think about doing that in the hygiene book. And it's really, really important to hit your goals. Because like I said, if you just schedule 6 prophies in a day, you're not going to hit what you need to hit. Right. So it's really being intentional again with, and I love the concept of meeting with your admin team, those people that are answering the phones and scheduling the appointments so that they really have an understanding for what we're going for here and why we have those blocks and to really respect those. I think that's so important.
So important. And that's, just like the SOP for the hygiene team, that's setting them up for success because they know exactly when they're doing their job and when they're doing the best that they can do. And it feels good to know that, to be set up for success like that. So that was one of the things. And then another thing was I was looking at how many cancellation fees were being written off. And that was a huge problem for us, huge problem. So the cancellation fee, isn't meant to be punitive for our patients either. We do 48 hours, $48, just to make it easy to remember across the board. So if we do not have notice from a patient, and we start reminding them of their appointments about 2 weeks in advance. So there's a huge window of time when they can call if there are any scheduling issues. And of course, it's always at our discretion. If we want to write something off or a patient is sick, of course, right? But patients who just weren't showing up to their appointment or weren't calling 2 days in advance would call the day of, say, oh, sorry, I can't make it. I got to go to the beach. All right, well, that's a problem because I reserved an hour for you, when I could have had someone else who's been waiting to get in. And that's disrespectful. It's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the patients who are waiting. It's not fair to me because now I'm sitting around. It's not fair to the practice. So we have a policy that is, if the patient fails one appointment, we can write that off. That's not my first go-to though. My first go-to is review our cancellation policy, ask what happened kind of thing, and kind of say, okay, I'm happy to adjust this for you, but just know for the future that this is our policy, and give us at least 2 days notice, like respect everyone's time. And a great thing that I started doing to make sure that I met my goal too was when I was booking their next appointments in the operatory, I would remind patients of the cancellation fee, and in a kind way say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and reserve this appointment for you, on Tuesday, September 31st at 2 p.m. If you notice any scheduling conflicts ahead of time of this appointment, as we approach that time, please let us know at least 2 days in advance. We're going to start reminding you about 2 weeks in advance, so you'll have plenty of time if there are any issues. And I said, it's really silly to pay a cancellation fee, so just make sure you get it before that 48-hour window. And they're like, oh yeah, thank you, and then it's not a punitive thing. I'm not telling them after the fact. They've been fully warned, and I tell them, let me know if you need some help rescheduling. So that was one way that I met that goal, is because Fran, my admin person, was very aware that I wanted to hold people accountable within reason, right? Within reason. And also I did that in the operatory. So that was one of the ways that I met that goal. So the basic framework though is, for reaching any goal, I think it's important to look at history, right?
You gotta know where you've been to know where you want to go. So yes, I think you do have to review. And I have actually, this being January, I just finished sitting down with all of our hygiene team individually and kind of reviewing where we were for 2020, everything from production to collections to what perio percentage averaged out to be for the year, reappointment percentages, and then service history, like, all the product counts, like how many we had done prophies versus perio maintenance versus products, to really kind of see how that shook out, so that we can look forward and be like, okay, where was I strong? Where was I weak? And where do I go from here to really set myself some goals?
Yeah, because where's the starting point? Just like we get baseline diagnostics on all of our patients, we need baseline on our own performance and where our numbers are to know where we're going and what's going to be attainable and what's not. So I looked at history first. So I looked at the prior years and what my collections and production were. And I looked in dental intel, did my procedure counts, and saw how many of each thing I'm doing. And by the way, that's a great tool too. Like you were saying, the procedure counts, just to see like, what am I co-diagnosing? Like, what am I assessing? Is this on par with our population's needs? It's a good measuring tool, like to see like, am I missing something? Is something falling through the cracks? Do I need to reevaluate how I'm evaluating? So that's a good thing. But so reviewing prior stats, I reviewed my past perio percentage, my collections and productions for years before, how many days I was working, how many patients I was seeing a day, and just, out of curiosity, looking at all that stuff. And then my goals to reach my 400,000 production goal was I wanted to collect at least 90%, and I collected more than 90% of that goal. And production and collections, obviously not the same thing. Collections are actually the numbers, actually the money that is paid to the practice. Production is almost monopoly money, right? Because if that production's not being collected, it doesn't really matter, right? So they have to be pretty darn close. And we're an insurance office, so I made it 90% minimum because there are insurance adjustments and write-offs and all the things. Ideally, I would like them to be about 95% or higher. I think that that's a reasonable thing, but I made that my goal. I wanted to increase production per visit. I wanted to increase my production per hour and increase perio percentage, because there was a discrepancy, and there actually still is, between our population. We have an aging and older and retiree population, and so their perio percentage is higher than the general population, and I want to be on par with their needs. So that was one of my goals. Yeah. And in order to achieve that, I had to assess at every visit, like Charissa talked about before, doing a perio chart at every visit, not that CPE. The CPE is once a year when there are major changes, but I started doing perio assessments even on my prophy patients, because things can change in 6 months. Yes, they can. And then, when I had time, getting that flow together to be able to start same day treatment a lot of times and get the patient enrolled. And the patient, patients are more motivated, I think, to complete something that they've already started. So that's one reason, like they will come back to finish the other half if we've started today, kind of thing. And getting them in quickly on those Flex Fridays was great because all the information was fresh in their head. They remembered the value and they were like, yes, I need to get this done. They remember that it's an urgent thing. And I showed that and proved it to them by saying, this is so important that I'm going to open a day when I'm not usually here to see you and complete this work for you. So that was some of the ways that I achieved those goals. Yeah. So increasing production per visit, increasing production per hour had to do with bringing on some new products too. So brought on Perio Protect after we visited you in 2018, and that was creating that whole protocol, and really started getting moving in 2019. The doctors started having our backs with that and really supported Perio Protect after they started seeing the outcomes, like our patients just really seeing the differences, and the patients understanding the value of preventive care and keeping their perio disease arrested. So bringing on a new product, really structuring and partnering with my admin person. And then in regards to the numbers themselves, making a bite-sized breakdown.
Right. Because when you start your year and you're like, ooh, I want to hit 400,000 this year. And you're like, that's pretty overwhelming. Yeah. I mean, that's significant for hygiene.
Yeah.
So, that's one of those things where it's easy to be like, ooh, that's a lot. I don't, and get overwhelmed and kind of check out. Yeah. So breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, that's how it really seems more feasible.
Yep.
And those increments are important because then it's not the big picture. You're reaching it incrementally.
Yep. And it has to be that way because you're right. It is an overwhelming feat and you're looking at a year-long goal. Like, holy crap, that's a long time. It's a big goal and it was way outside of my comfort zone, so I had to really let go of ego and fear, like we all do when we're setting our goals, especially publicly. And the great thing at, I think, both of our offices is that we announce our goals publicly, and that's part of accountability. Like, that is a great thing because there's something about saying it out loud to other people, like, I'm going to do this.
Well, and I think too, like, do you know anybody who's ever had like some like physical, like, people that have been CrossFitters or running marathons or those kind of things. And, you get kind of excited, you have those patients, I have those patients that come in, they're like, oh, I'm training for a marathon and you're like rooting them on. You're like, you can do this. This is so awesome. Yeah. It's fun to be kind of a part of that journey. Yeah. And as a team, we get to be part of that journey. Mm-hmm. So it takes that vulnerability and it takes that ego to, to be like, oh gosh, I'm going to step out and say, I'm going to do this and worry about everybody like judging you and looking at you in a scary way. But the thing is, that team's going to be who helps you achieve those goals. So they've got to know what that is. They've got to know how to support you and how to help you. That's the only way you're going to reach that.
Yep. And achieving that on the accountability and sharing with the team, like, part of the goal setting is saying, what support do I need from the team to meet this goal? Right. And this goes in every direction. How can I support you also to reach your goal? Correct. So some of the things that I asked the team for were, if you had a patient in restorative that wanted same day hygiene, let the hygiene team know. Yeah. If you have a new patient who wants to convert from a limited exam to a comprehensive and an FMX, then let the hygienist know. Like, we would love to establish with them. If you need a same day perio chart on a new patient, call me over there, even if it's not that I have a full on opening. If I have 10 minutes, if I have 15, if I have extra time, I'm sitting, doing something. Why not? Let me establish same day with those patients, because a lot of those converted to those Friday, same week scalings or, Perio Protect and that sort of thing. So, allow me to establish. And what were some of the other things?
Well, when you're talking about breaking it into bite size, so what did that look like for you? How did that play out for you?
So for me, the big picture goal was 400,000 in production for 2019, and collections, I think that makes it 360 was the minimum collections. Yeah. So I exceeded that. I think I collected around 370. But that meant it was 33K, a little over 33K a month. It was 8,333 a week, and it was 1667 per day. I think that was based on a 5-day work week when I was doing that flex day a lot. And I would say I scheduled that flex day maybe 2 to 3 times a month. So it was kind of in between 4 and 5 days a month. But yeah, that gave me, a starting point, and that gave me a daily goal. And then, this week I did, and then, this month I did. And that, like you just said, is that incremental check-in. Right. And then also the team is aware. So they're like, hey, how you doing? Can I help you with this? And
And it keeps you focused on it. Mm-hmm. If you're just looking at the big numbers, sometimes it's like, I got 10 more months to go here. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at the smaller, like what I need to hit every day, there's some days you might do double that. And you're like, okay, I don't have to work quite as hard, later this week. I mean, it gives you that momentum that you need to keep going forward with.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to say as I'm listening to us talk about all of this is, I know we hopefully obviously have a lot of hygiene listeners, but I'm hoping we have a few doctor listeners as well. Because what you might be hearing us say is Brittany and I have a lot of autonomy, autonomy and kind of setting our own goals, and obviously this is a point I did want to make. Obviously your goals need to fit into the practice goals. We have a tier system that we set up for our practices each month that, we hit certain marks and we have certain rewards and that sort of thing, which is awesome. But you want your goals to fit into that practice, paradigm. So obviously that has to happen, but then we have the autonomy of how we're going to hit that and what products or, services you brought PerioProtect in. And, we've talked about in previous podcasts, that was kind of like eating glass to make that happen. That was a lot of work. Sometimes the docs do make it a little hard coming in, and I get it because they're owners and they're like, I already have so much money going out the door. I don't want to invest.
And they want to make sure it's the right thing for the patients too, because ultimately they're responsible. Yes, I get it.
It falls on their shoulders. And I totally get that. But what I hope you're hearing is that sometimes, first of all, your hygiene department is not a loss leader. Like it can be really, really productive for your practice.
It is a loss leader if you believe it is and treat it like it is.
Yes. Again, it's that mindset, what you think about it, but it has the potential to be so much more. So if you're a doc and you're listening, you may want to just kind of take a few minutes and think about, the caliber of your hygienist and what they're really capable of if you will empower them and give them the freedom and the autonomy. I mean, obviously Dr. Spodak gave Brittany the autonomy to say, hey, if you want to come out on your Fridays, if you're seeing that need and you want to make that happen, do it. And he didn't put a whole lot of rules or regulations around that. And it's amazing what people will do of their own volition if you'll just empower them and encourage them and celebrate them. And so that's probably the last part I would say about this goal thing is when you do hit the mark, celebrate it big. Celebrate even if you don't hit it because you grew and you were trying and you were growing. Like, I just think it's super, super important to be celebratory along the way.
Yeah. And I think, on the bite-sized breakdown, that is an opportunity to celebrate those things. And on the flip side, I just want to say, if there's a month when I didn't meet it, it's okay. Like, there is nothing going wrong. It's all good. Like, things are going to balance out. Every single day I don't see perio patient. Most days, yes, I do. On average we do just because of our population, right? But if there is no SRP that comes out of today, that's okay. If we are assessing, people have actual disease and actual problems. We don't have to make it up. It's there. If we are doing our jobs to the best of our ability, it will be there. We don't have to worry about not meeting it or, being under this month. It's okay. It all balances out. It's really just for celebrating and knowing where we are and on the spectrum of meeting our goals and staying on the right track.
Right. Yeah. So I want to finish up with just kind of some tips, because you might be listening to this and be like, I never really thought about setting goals for myself. We have our morning meeting and I know we have these numbers we're supposed to hit. And, in my practice, it doesn't really matter whether we hit them or not. Nothing's going to change. I know that mentality. I've been part of those teams before. So if you're wondering, okay, I hear all this and it sounds good, but where do I start? One thing I would say is I know Brittany and I both really believe that the meat and potatoes of hygiene is perio treatment. 100%. So I would step back and look at what are your assessment standard of operations. Is everybody doing that the same way and doing it every time? And really look at your perio percentage and where you're at for that. And if you're not hitting, 35, 40, 45%, which when you look at, the CDC stats on, the prevalence of perio, then that might be where you start is, just really being determined that I'm going to raise that perio percentage treatment.
And I want to touch on that. Yeah, I do want to touch on that because Charissa is absolutely right. And this goes back to, looking at what the facts and the stats are, where is our population? We know that more than 50% of adults over the age of 30 have periodontitis, and many more have gingivitis. They're kind of on their way, and they both have, a perio disease, a form of perio disease. And then as the population ages, that number goes up and up and up. And so if you're in an aging population and, retirees like I am, and that number should be much higher. And, Charissa and I both use Dental Intel to kind of track our stats and track our numbers. It's a great measurement tool, kind of keeps us on track. But Dental Intel I remember looking at some benchmarks from 2018, and per Dental Intel, the lowest performing, quote unquote, lowest performing offices only treated 3% of their patients for perio, like 3%. Are you telling me there's not opportunity there? And it's not even, I'm not even thinking like profitability. I'm thinking like, dude, those patients are walking out the door with untreated disease. Like that is a problem, that is a problem, and it's not okay. Like we have an ethical and legal responsibility to tell patients where they are on the spectrum of health. Like that is what we went to school for. We need to tell them. The average offices were treating about 16% of their patients for perio, and the highest performing were treating about 33% of their patients for perio. Kudos to them. And also there's still a discrepancy between that 33% and our population's needs. So I'm just saying there is room. Like there are things that are not being assessed. Clearly our patients aren't being, completely diagnosed accurately and adequately. And it's okay. We're on a curve. We're all learning here. But that's another goal that you can set. And if you have a great resource like Dental Intel, use it. That's another thing that at SPODAC, and I know that you guys are working on it too.
Yes.
We did, and that was a huge difference maker for us from 2018 to 2019. We looked at the history. We had historically been about 29-30% and made a goal of 40%. And now I think our stats are at 49%, so we are almost reaching the needs of our population, which makes me like ecstatic, because it's not about just the numbers. It's about like, we are changing people's lives. When we are treating their perio, we know that we are minimizing their comorbidities, we are extending their life expectancy, and it just makes me thrilled. So that's another exciting part of meeting our goals, is like it always helps our patients. It is always for the good of our patients, our practice, ourselves.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's a great place to start. If you haven't really thought about it, I encourage you to sit down with your hygiene team, just sit down with your doctor, sit down with yourself, and determine where you want to go this year. Who do you want to be as a hygienist? How do you want to treat your patients, and where will the numbers take you when you're doing that effectively? So communicate with us. Tell us, what goals do you have? How can we help you with those? How can we help you set them? How can we help you track them? And how can we celebrate with you? We say it every time, we are in this together. And we just really, really, really appreciate this community and all of you as listeners, and just continue to encourage you along the way.
And don't forget, download the app Mighty Networks and search Bulletproof Hygiene if you really want to connect on a deeper level with us and ask your questions. We can't wait to talk to you there.
Bye-bye, everybody.